So without further ado, let's please give a warm Georgia Tech welcome to Mr. Faruq Hunter.
Make sure my mic is on. Sorry for that. Now, as far as that proud father bit goes, if any of you guys want some kids, I can save you a whole lot of pain. You can come get some of mine. Thank you for having me. I said I wasn't going to start that way, so I'm not going to say the thank you, all that kind of stuff, but I did anyway. Thank you very much. I'm here to talk about what's on the board, and that's the principles of freedom, and it boils down to this. How can you do what you want to do, when you want to do, how you want to do it, with who you want to do it, and like a 2-year-old brat surrounded by a bunch of hippies, everybody love you for it, right? So the first things first, there's this guy. His name is, I don't know if you know him, that's a great little picture of him, is Warren Buffett. Now, I like Warren Buffett, not because I'm an addict about money or I'm obsessed with, what he's done financially, but I'm kind of obsessed with his principles of life and exactly what he thinks money should do. Warren Buffett, by his own admission, says that he was wired a very specific way, born to a very specific time, went into a very specific industry, came through a very specific set of parents in just the right place to be Warren Buffett, to make the money that he makes, to make the impact that he makes. As a matter of fact, his philanthropist side is all based on the fact that he feels like so few people are born and wired that way so well that he now has the responsibility to distribute his wealth back to everybody else who wasn't. He has a particular principle about money, and that is that it's no good unless it allows you to do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. Basically, live the life you want to live. If you know a little bit about this guy, he lives in a 3-bedroom house still, has for several years. He drives a Buick, and he's never had a computer on his desk. And people like Bill Gates follow his principles and his methods and everything else. But the question is for those of us who aren't wired exactly like Warren Buffett, who weren't born to just the right parents, who didn't have just the right circumstances, then how is it that we're supposed to use money as an enabler of freedom to do what we want to do? The question is, will we ever make enough that it gives us that independence? Right? Last I checked, $2 million. I mean, a bad night in Vegas can get rid of $2 million. So it's not the best thing in the world. Most of us are raised to have a different path. We're told that we're born, we should get an education. I don't know if you guys watched the documentary called Living on $1 a Day, where these guys went around the world and I think they went to Guatemala, and they tried to live off $1 a day. And their message to all the young kids who were impoverished was, get an education. It'll change your situation. Right? But we're told to get that education, find a great college to go to. After we find that great college, we should then find a great career or become an entrepreneur, build a great company, and then we should retire, and somewhere in the midst, we get our slice of the pie. In a very Family Guy way. Pie. I hope you guys get my references because they're awesome. I'm a geek, man. So the question is that the ultimate path to freedom? Will that get you this freedom that all of us want? The ability to live the life we want to live, when we want to live it, how we want to live it. Let's break it down. If money is a true enabler of freedom, how realistic is it that the people in this room will ever be able to use it as an enabler of freedom? The best way to figure that out is to figure out exactly how much money's there and what cut of it you can expect to get through your hard work or anything else you do. If you were to liquidate the GDP of every single country in the world, count even the weird ones, you get around $210 trillion, right? 210 trillion US dollars is what is considered the entire combined wealth of the entire world. Now, the World Bank and many other organizations have done statistics on wealth distribution throughout the globe. One thing that is commonly known is that 10% of the world's population literally own roughly 86% of all that wealth. It means that the other 90% of us, despite where we fall, 90%, 0.9 times 7 billion people share 14% of that wealth. Or $4,248 if it was spread out like butter on a bread. Now, you're thinking to yourself right now, but I live in the United States. And regardless of those 1.5 billion people in the world who are offset and have to live on $1 a day because we earn more, I can worry about that, yes, but it's not my situation. So this graph represents what you earn here in the United States. I had an epiphany this morning. I did wait till this morning to finish the rest of the slides. So I was finishing the slides this morning, and I came across the tables that classify people into lower class, middle class, and upper class. And it went further, lower, middle, upper middle. And I figured out this morning that I am lower upper class. It shocked the crap out of me. Because I realized that the lower upper class makes about $150,000 a year or more and has maybe $500,000 in assets. I'm on the upper part of the lower upper class. I told my wife, I ran in her bedroom, she was asleep. I said, honey, did you know this? She said, wow, I guess the daughter is true. She said, we're rich. So, I'm going to get a new bumper sticker. It's going to say, rich. Right on the side. I don't think so. But the truth is, the 1% in the United States, the jump between the top 5 percentile, top 4 percentile, and their wealth is so huge that you'd have to jump hundreds of times and prove your wealth hundreds of times more to get to their level. So this curve that we're all working on, this path that we're shooting for, I would hope that I'm in a room with business people and engineers. Being an engineer, being a business person, if you walked in my door and said, hey man, I got a great idea. I said, what? We're going to do this thing. Okay. Now, there's a 20%, 10% probability it'll work. I'll say, get out of my office. However, the majority of us are vested in this method of getting to that goal of freedom, despite how improbable it is. So the question still lies though. We can't sit in a room somewhere shivering, oh my God, I'll never make enough money in order to be free. It drives us crazy. So there's got to be something else. Maybe it's something that people aren't talking about anymore. Capitalism is not as old as Adam. So people did do something before. We still have the USAID and UNDP and the World Bank trying to promote capitalism and its structures in several countries throughout the world. So that means it's not even accepted across the entire planet yet. So there has to be other models that exist. I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay for some. Capitalism is a pretty great system when it comes to distribution of goods and getting things done. Not necessarily for making you wealthy, but when countries need to get things done, capitalism works pretty darn good. That's why their GDPs are way higher than we'll ever earn independently. But through a little poking around, a little research, a little feeling around the world, 70, 80, 90 or so countries, I figured something out around the world. There were 3 principles, and I'm talking about from reading Sun Tzu and the tipping point and all kinds of stuff. You find that there's 3 undeniable principles to allowing a person to be free. To give you the ability to do what you want, when you want, how you want, with who you want, and the world love you for it. Now, at some point in my life, I thought this was a joke. I came across it, and I said it, and I'm analyzing things because my background is as an analyst and an engineer, and I'm saying, yeah, that'll work. Then I looked up and said, no, I'm nuts. Right? It can't be that simple. It's not actually simple. But then the small country boy from Tuskegee, Alabama, was sitting darn near underground somewhere in some post-Russian Yugoslav country with the current prime minister, sharing, Mama Lega and Pachinta. And I realized, and he was asking me, Faruq, would you mentor my son? Then I realized, there must be some value to this concept. Maybe I should tell other people. So I figured, why not Georgia Tech? Before we go any further, we got to stop and define this a little bit deeper. That is, what is freedom? Honestly, what is freedom? As a matter of fact, let's be interactive. One person, can you tell me what freedom is? One person got a concept, an idea what your personal freedom is? Don't be shy. No, there it goes. Choice. Okay, let's work on that one. I want everyone in this room right now to choose to be free of air for the next 7 minutes. Okay, let's not do that because you'll all be dead by the time I go. Okay. So there's a limit to it. It's not just about doing whatever you want or choosing whatever you want. Freedom is actually more about being able to choose how you fulfill your needs without someone else telling you how to do it or you having to fulfill their needs in the process by force. I'm not going to say you don't have to fulfill their needs, but by force. That's about as good as it gets, guys. No matter how advanced the technology becomes for our food systems, it's still a way to eat. No matter how many buttons you put on the side of the toilet, it's still a place to make deposits. It doesn't change. That body has not been built. And if it is, you won't be human anymore. So essentially, the ability to choose your needs and how you feel them and fulfill them as you see fit is what freedom is all about. And the very first principle, when you think that way, is to free yourself from dependency on other people. That literally is the main principle. Number one, if I want to be free, I got to stop asking from people. Let me break this down a little bit more. Your needs are not just simply needs. They're a little complex. Just a little. One, you have involuntary needs. Things that you can't control. Breathing, a couple other things. You can't stop. It's going to happen regardless. When it does stop, it's all over. Right? I feel the need to plug a little bit of my own personal culture into this conversation at this point. There's an Islamic belief that there's this angel of death that comes and gets you when it's all over. Now, supposedly, he's preceded by 5 other angels. And each one comes and snatches something else away. Food, water, and the last guy before the angel of death comes snatches breath. And then you go. That's the belief. It alludes to the concept that these things are beyond your control. Now, there's another set of needs. They're also needed to sustain life. We just named one of them. Food, water, sometimes basic shelter. We call those, at least I'm going to refer to them for this speech, as the essential needs. Outside of that, you have those things that make you have the life you want to live. Things like education. Things like technology. Things like communication. Designed in such a way that you have the life you want. Let's call those core needs. Now, a free person, or a person who's adhering to this first principle, develops these needs within what we're going to call the internal environment. That is an environment for which you own and you control. It can be your house, a community. It can be a neighborhood. You got people in New York who haven't left a couple city blocks their whole life. It can be an entire city, state, province, country. The only thing that changes when you widen that internal environment is that the people who are assisting you within that model to be free, you are dependent on those people. And you accept that freedom is a concept that you collectively own, not independently. Some people tend to think that this isn't real. Some folks go to other countries, run around all crazy, thinking that freedom defines everything. The first time I ever left the country, I was 15 years old. No, excuse me, I was 14 years old, turned 15 there. And we were a bunch of Americans running around in Khartoum, Sudan. And boy, we were able to get away with murder. And a lot of the guys were from Philadelphia and Detroit and other places, and they were running around with the whole dippity-dap and this and that until somebody finally told them, you're going to stop that. Freedom has limitations. Guys like Steve Fassett found that out. He was using money to be free and kept testing the limits of that freedom until it took his life. Also, guys like Oliver Queen found out. Nobody gets my Arrow reference. Come on, somebody's got to get my Arrow reference. Go watch it, man. I told you I'm a geek. So the real problem with freedom is that many of us lack it because we try to source our essential and core needs from environments outside of our internal environment. We reach into our exponential environments and our external environments and even the distant environments, and we ask for things. We import things. We have to go to the store to eat. How many people in the room right now know how to slaughter a goat or a cow? You're my man. If you tell me you know how to gut it too, you're really my man. There you go. So we are dependent on people, and this impedes our freedom. This means that you have to adhere to the systems that they ask you to in order to receive what you need to exist, in order to have the kind of life you want. So when these limitations are put on you, as far as money, earning, someone authorizing your promotion, another company gifting you with an account, it's because you need them. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying it's not free. That's free. It's not that you leave these environments. You're still a part of them. But when you source these core things from yourself and these essential things, then you have achieved freedom. Now, there's a method to this. It's not as simple as just saying it. You can probably go on Google right now and Google some guys who went off in the middle of the desert somewhere. They were going to live the free lifestyle and, live off the earth and so much and so on. And about 5 years, they came back home. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the movie where the kid left high school, left college. I think he was going to Emory or something like that. And he left. It's a true story. Went on his own, made it to Alaska, went to live on his own, and very unfortunately died in the middle of the woods. Into the wild. Thank you. Poor son almost had a heart attack because that was his dream for a minute and he just went away. But there are commitments that you have to make to yourself to make this freedom a reality. They are, by the way, the exact same commitments that are being made for you right now. They are the things that you're vested in learning, and they are held in the systems that you are vested in finding a career in, or creating a business to operate within. You must have a commitment to acquisition. If you own nothing, you own nothing. It's just that simple. The United States is an awesome place because it allows you to buy land. It allows you to incorporate a municipality as a city if there's enough of you there and you can take care of your own needs. These systems have been made extinct in many a place, and you still can do it here. I used to live in Malaysia. Bumiputra is a local guy. There were sections where we couldn't even buy land because a Bumiputra had to own it with us. Bumiputra had to own 51% of our business, everything. And I like Malaysia. But you got to own something. You have to have the ability to analyze what you have. If you're standing on a piece of land and you don't know what's beneath you, if you don't know how to analyze how much iron ore you have, or whether or not the compilation of concrete, if you don't know how to put it together, if you don't know that limestone, shells, fly ash can all be used, if you don't know how to make soap by burning a couple of trees and making some lye, and then taking some oils from some pecans or something, and then getting the glycerin out of it and making you some soap, then having the land doesn't mean anything. Owning something means nothing if you don't know how to use it. Knowledge. You have to have a commitment to gathering knowledge from the time you're born to the time you die. And you have to value all knowledge. Some knowledge is useless. That is real. But it's really hard to figure out what knowledge is useless because we all have perspectives from our backgrounds. And sometimes we throw something off not realizing how valuable it truly is. So you have to have a humility about you to learn from everybody and everything. Innovation. When knowledge doesn't exist, or when the conditions that existed that allowed someone else's knowledge to build something do not apply in what you own, you have to come up with a new way to do it. Or else you'll have to depend on them for that. Resource management. You've got to manage your own resources. You got to know how much to eat, how much not to eat, when to drink, what to take in, how to save a little bit. All these things. Karl Marx, founder, quote-unquote founder of socialism, there was others before, said that socialism would be born from capitalism. What did he mean? He meant that people were already in the capitalist society. And in order to get to a socialist level, you had to pay for it. I'm not preaching socialism, by the way. Just, don't do that. I'm in Georgia. So, but wherever you go from now, whatever path you choose, it will be born from where you are. So you'll have to use resources that you know to get to where you want to go. Planning and hard work. You need to plan. You got to have a big plan, a big goal. Like Sun Tzu said, you need to start with the moral law, work down, build a smaller plan, stair steps all the way up, and you need to know where you're going. If you don't plan, someone else will plan for you. All this stuff might seem too hard. And the decision that you might make when you analyze this kind of stuff is you say, I don't want to do that. I'm happy with being controlled. I'm going to work. It's okay. As long as you know it, then you can make the decision and you can be committed to whatever path you're in. And the idea here of knowing this is to be committed to whatever path you're in. And that's where hard work comes in. Hard work defines everything. Absolutely everything. When you do for yourself, when you create freedom, hard work is a little different than just going out and doing some stuff. If you think about the pyramid of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you think about self-actualization being at the top and basic needs at the bottom, when you're doing the work to get what you need, you find purpose, self-actualization, belonging, self-esteem. It comes through hard work. If you don't believe me, come to my farm. I will teach you all that good stuff. We will move some dirt and some manure. The second one is a principle that most people who thought that they were developing freedom completely ignored. But it literally is one of the most significant ones. You have to reverse the cycle and make the world dependent on you. Free yourself from dependency, create dependency. This is how you ensure your freedom. Why? Because by creating dependency, you create value. Not one of you in this entire room will ever move forward in your life by the permission of another if you do not create value for that person. Guaranteed. You might find yourselves in positions throughout your life where you are the most intelligent person in the room. And for some reason, you cannot move forward. But it's because you have missed the ball and forgot to create value to the person who is in charge of that promotion or escalation of your life. If you think back for a minute, think to Sir Isaac Newton, think to Steve Jobs, think to Confucius, think to George Washington Carver, Bill Gates, miss somebody? Henry Ford. Think about these guys. When did they actually create the things that changed our lives? Were they deeply, deeply troubled by the basic needs, satisfying them on a daily basis? Were they surrounded in a room of 1,000 people? No. They were typically in an insulated environment where their basic needs were being taken care of either by their parents, somebody, their students. And then they were able to dedicate themselves to solving some of the world's most complex problems. And from there, they improved the lives of everyone. And you know what? It's a perfect cycle. You create freedom for yourself. Relieve yourself of those hardships, of being that previous 90% worried every single day whether or not someone's going to take something from you, so that you can focus all your energies on being awesome. And then after that, you fix the world's problems. The world in turn is better off, and then the world is vested in ensuring your freedom, because that's what got them what they needed. Now, all conspiracy theories to the side, if there's the 1% making any kind of plan, if there's any systems being developed that we work in, it's to make sure that each one of us have value to the world, that we are able to input so that larger systems can grow. But when you decide to do this on your own and you give that same output, the process no longer matters to the individuals receiving the output. So this is where the freedom model really kicks in. But it also has a set of commitments. First is diplomacy. Not like, kumbaya, let's all get along, I like your hair, how you doing? A lot more like, what do you need? I'm doing my impression of a mob boss, leaning on somebody. I give you that, no problem. But you're going to owe me something. A lot more of that. Do you think that when a shark walks in the business room, he's saying kumbaya? Or is he singing, what do you need? How can I get it to you? And what do you owe me in return? So diplomacy is a lot more finding out what people need and finding ways to give it to them so that they are invested in your freedom. Quality. You can talk all you want. But if you can't provide me something great, your talk is worthless. And if you can't deliver it to me when I need it, how often I need it, your talk is also worthless. Like I said, many of us will make the decision, this is too hard. And we'll go into environments where people will dictate this for us because the rules never change. Either you're going to commit to it or someone you work for will. But you're not going to gain any level of freedom without it. And last but not least, the third principle is to protect your freedom. Now, I don't mean go to war. I kind of mean the Sun Tzu art of war. You fight a war and there's no casualties. It means that you don't have the ability, because you've now gained this freedom, to just run around and act like a madman. Yeah, what? I'm free. Leave me alone. Oh, you nothing. Get out my face. You don't have the right to do that. You instead have a responsibility to create an internal set of laws that govern you, your own discipline. I first went into boot camp in the Coast Guard, U.S. Coast Guard. I think I was amazed. We wrote down sheets of paper, and our CC asked us to hand in our goals for being at the Coast Guard. And I was the only one that said, I'm here to learn how to better myself and give myself greater discipline. Everyone else, he started going off about it, by the way. Said, I hope someone else teaches me how to do this, teaches me discipline, teach me that. He said, I can't teach you discipline. You either got it or you don't. And I can either refine it or I can't. You have to create an internal set of laws that you live by that reinforce the principles of greatness that a free person has. You also have to create a set of external laws that you condition yourself to and adhere to the external laws of the world itself. I mean, like, don't kill anybody. That's what I'm talking about. Right? No, like, hostile. You watch a movie, cut people up. You have to focus on how to be a great person and how to emit that from yourself naturally versus someone else having to police it within you. And when you can develop that level of discipline and order and structure, I can guarantee you that you'll reach the heights of freedom that you really want to reach, that you'll get to where you want to go, and you'll receive some of that good old love that Warren Buffett gets. Last but not least, all of this is captured in a wonderful book that I decided people didn't want to hear me talk as much as they wanted to read themselves. And there's my Facebook if you got any questions. Thank you very much for having me.
Faruq, Mr. Hunter, sorry, I have a question.
Faruq is fine.
All right. Do you live off the grid then?
I live in a homestead, and we recently just purchased about 300 acres of land about an hour from here to create the first off-the-grid village in the state of Georgia.
Faruq, will you tell us a little bit about Genius Corps and what you do around the world with this kind of leadership that you talked about?
So Genius Corps was something that came out of Genius Consulting LLC, which is the consulting firm that we have. We've rebranded Genius Co-Support Services, where we were doing work with USAID, with the European Union, other people to basically do what they call capacity building, mostly in Eastern Europe, Northern Africa, a couple other places. And while we were doing that, one of the things we got caught up in was how to help people really change their economy, change their lifestyle, and everything else. When we started doing that, we found the flaw in the overall model because all the money that was coming into the countries was going to the richest people, and we'd always have to partner with them in order to get anything done. And the smallest people would, they get a brazen over, maybe some cash for a second, and then everybody forgot about them. And when we kept seeing this consistency, we decided to create an organization where we would put the smartest and the brightest people together and make sure they had a way to collaborate with one another and facilitate that exchange. And that's what Genius Score came out of. And just recently, we've taken a couple of branding exercises, and we're rebranding everything to the Freedom Nation, or Freedom is our new brand. And everything is off of that. So Freedom, the Genius Score is becoming the Freedom Coalition and the Freedom Commons, which is a way of just getting everybody together.
How does your off-the-grid village fit into your freedom principle?
It is principle number one. It's the idea of not asking from anyone else. Also, in the off-the-grid village, what's happening in that space is we're screening people who are coming down to that space. We're looking for people who have strong skill sets and know how to create something. They're engineers, developers, craftsmen, that level. And by taking these people, putting them together and refining those skills by the ability to, manage your own water, learn all these principles that we have, we want to increase their ability to do and then increase the output of that space. Actually, the Freedom Village is planned to be the heartbeat of the regrowth of Hancock County, which used to be the richest county in all of Georgia, but now it's the poorest county in all the state of Georgia. And it's had horrible statistics for a long time. So what we're doing down in the Freedom Village is showing how you can implement these principles with wonderful and awesome motivated people. And they can become a heartbeat for revitalizing the space's economy and create a localized economy that then outputs greatly to its neighbors.
How have you implemented these ideals into your own life, whether that's a specific role or your entire adult life?
I took off my suit. If you find pictures of me online, you see the whole cufflink thing and all that stuff, that's old me. So one of them is this: I'm hard-headed, right? I don't necessarily like doing what people tell me to do. I wasn't born in such a way or raised in a way where I was told that I was dumb. I was told that I was pretty intelligent. I don't know everything, but I do like making my own decisions. So what I realized was that I could never do that with my home loan. I could never do that with the large amount of debt that I had at the time. Right? I got 8 kids, so we were living in like a 6,500 square foot house. I got rid of it. I moved into an 1,800 square foot house that had 3 acres of land on it. Right? Started farming every day. Son, Mr. Six-Pack, 8-pack. Got that way because I make him slave in the backyard, digging out our aquaponics ponds and, splitting wood by hand in order to create our split rail fences. Right before I take him inside and teach him the latest stuff in Angler and Mongo code and in the mean stack. So we're flexible people. We code and we do process engineering during the day, and we dig and plant on the weekends and throughout the rest of the day.
Oh wow, that's really loud. So with 10 kids, I'm really curious to hear.
Just 8. Don't give me 2 more now.
Oh wait,
What
was
are you
it? Oops, sorry. How do you balance your work life and your family life?
Oh, that's easy. Because if I had 1 kid, that would be a more complex question. Because then I'd have to be that joker's friend, and I wouldn't want that. Instead, I spent my youth, I'm still young. I spent my early 20s, late teens. I got married when I was 17. I spent that raising the first set of kids and putting some really hard principles into them and reinforcing it. And I was a lot meaner guy, Those kids now help reinforce that discipline on the next set of kids. So, my kids will accuse me of something that I am a task manager and a program and a project manager in my house. And I insist on it, right? I have to use systems. I just give you one simple example, the kitchen, right? My wife's thing is put up a little list, say that each person has a job to do. They've got to, this and that in a day and all that stuff. I said, no, let's choose one kid, you. You get them all together, and you go in there and clean up that kitchen, and I swear to God, if it's bad, I'm only going to kill you and nobody else. So life becomes really easy if you start implementing your what you know and your skills across every single thing. And the last thing is, like I told people that I work contracts for still every now and again, I said, when I'm here, I'm here. When I'm not, I'm not. And that helps me to focus.
What did you do after you graduated high school since you were so young?
I was young, but I came back to the country. I worked for a little while, like just some grunt work, because my degree was from Sudan, from Khartoum. It really wasn't accepted, right? So it left me having to kind of get into the grind. So the first thing I did was try to get into Georgia Tech. And that's true, I'm not just kidding. But they told me I had started too late, and I wouldn't be able to get a scholarship for coming in too late to start my MBA. So I said, okay, well, I'm not going to waste a year. So I went and got married. And then after I got married, that created its own set of problems in different situations. So I just started working really hard. And in the midst of working really hard, I taught myself computer programming. I opened up for a software company. I fit into a really good niche at just the right time and made a decent bit of money. Moved everybody, all 4 kids at the time, to Malaysia and to Sudan, and just I'm in Malaysia, and then we also lived in Singapore, not Sudan. But then I came back home after that, and we just kept building. And it was all about, at that point, it was all about feeding the children. So it's like, I'm the father. I'm a very traditional person. I have to provide. And it's not okay that someone else does. So that helped to encourage me to do more and more and more by trying to do that for them.
Hey, how's it going? So as one person becomes free, like definitely I can see what you're saying. Like the goal is to be able to do what you want when you want, the way you want to do it. What's your vision of when multiple people become free individually and come together? Like what do you see? What do you think happens then?
I visited this wonderful place, and if any of you have a chance to do it, you really should. It's in India. It's South India, just about 2 hours south of Chennai. Okay? And by the way, if any of you guys are tech people, you have to visit Chennai anyway. You need to. And then I went down to this place called Arterville. Now, Arterville was this piece of land, about 2,000 acres, that was in the French Quarter, in the French area of India. And a lot of French people moved to Arterville about 35, 40 years ago onto this barren piece of land. And one basic rule they had is that everyone had to be free. No one could dictate to anybody. Forget democracy. They had to have full consensus on every decision amongst 38 people. They didn't go very fast. They didn't. But they have a beautiful place. The most interesting thing about Arterville, I was able to sit down with one of the founders of Arterville when we were there and talk to him. She said that everything that they had done that moved them forward, like they have this beautiful common kitchen. It's all driven by solar stoves, solar ovens, where everybody, you pay $40 a month, and you get these, breakfast, lunch, and dinner made by professional cooks, which is just amazing. It's awesome. But she said basically there was a guy and his wife that moved to Arterville, achieved their own personal level of freedom inside their space, not bother anybody else, and just said, I don't care what you guys think, this needs to be done. And they all said, it won't work, nobody wants to eat in the common kitchen, everybody eats at their house, nobody wants to do that. So they just built it. They did it. They did what free people did. They just did it. Now everybody eats in the common kitchen. So kind of the model that you can take from that is without impeding on people's ability to be themselves, right? Without getting caught up in the small differences that people have, we're able to move, especially if we adhere to the last laws of internal laws and external laws that allow us to work with each other. Then we're able to move without conflicting on another person's freedom and also see those things build one on top of each other. I'm also not preaching that you shouldn't have a selected person to help you manage things or a leader that does. But I much more believe, especially in our day and time in the United States, leadership outside of politics has evolved to facilitators, not dictators. And in those free environments, facilitators are much needed to ensure that everyone can achieve their goals collectively.
I have a question that your concept of Freedom Village, are you planning to expand it to other countries or have you already done it?
So part of an initiative that we recently did, Geese Gone Global, and some of the other stuff that we had done with the consultant firm, was a lot of bridge building. So what we were trying to do is identify those countries we wanted to work in, where there were a set of circumstances that would allow us to even create this model at all. We knew that, and we know that we first have to give some place where people can come and visit and see it happen in full. So we're investing the next 3 or 5 years here in Georgia. But in 3 years, I've already told my family, I'm leaving for 2 years. I'm literally just walking out the front door. I'm gonna have a birthday party, we're gonna celebrate, and I'm gonna walk out the front door, and I'm gonna walk to Maine. I am. I walk the Appalachian Trail, and then I'm gonna head out to Iceland. And then from Iceland, I'll take northern Canada over into Alaska, cross the Bering Strait, walk through Siberia by bus, hitchhiking, whatever I can do. I'm big enough, nobody's gonna jump me. And then I'm gonna cover the entire world in 2 years. Kind of retake a lot of steps I've taken and everything else, but I'll be also recruiting individuals that we can bring back to the Freedom Institute in the village so that we can train them how to do this. We're also trying to set up a second village in the next 2 years in Liberia. And the reason we chose Liberia is not because it's just this great country, because it's really not in that way as far as government has a lot of problems, but it's because they won't restrict many people that we try to bring in. They don't give them a big visa problem. And then we're able to actually expand that. So the intention after the next 5 years is to use another 5 years after that to train people in other places and then facilitate and manage them throughout their things. Why we kind of call it Freedom Nation, because the idea is having like an autonomous nation that exists amongst many nations, but it has a single method of how to operate and do and how to grow and a methodology that kind of grows in that way. That's the big plan. Yes.
Do you see any, I guess, variation in the concept of freedom when you start to look at your personal relationships, for example, with your spouse, right? I would think there's some sort of mutual dependence there, or, I mean, just friendships.
Yep. It depends on you and your own design, right? Because the way I envision it is that it's not necessarily just an individual that's saying this, right? There was a lot of work that went into trying to dissect why people went to groups and understanding group methodology and everything else. I mean, groups were established initially because it made people stronger. They could do more of this stuff by having more people at the table, right? The difference is it's just that it's a decision, right? I like my wife. She's pretty, you know. I want to be with her. I want to hang out with her. I want to spend time with her, right? So my choice and her choice is to be with each other. So we created a willful dependency on one another in order to create a free environment for ourselves and our children where we're dependent on each other, but happily. You know, I think the idea of freedom kind of comes into play because there are so many people in so many different spaces. You know, I look at Ferguson, for example, right? What's the real problem? The real problem is you got a set of people who control nothing that they need. And there's a complaint from the folks who control everything that they need that are saying, I don't like you or the way you act. And so that conflict is there. Now, is the problem that they don't like them? Are you going to change that person's personality? No, you're not. What you need to change is this person's dependency, because then it won't matter if he likes them or not. He's not asking them for anything, so he's not a headache. He's not causing a problem. And I'm not saying, you know, let's take away race and all that stuff. Let's just go down to bare bones, human being to human being. For whatever reason, I don't like you. And you're saying that I got to keep your store open and police your streets. I don't want to do it. And if I got to do it, I'm going to be mean about it. Okay? I mean, that's human behavior you can't change. So the system that's broken is the one where there are people overly dependent on people they don't want to be dependent on, and people who are facilitating people who they don't want to facilitate. And that's where the freedom really comes into play. It really helps to make the balance of peace.
First of all, thanks for coming to Georgia Tech today. Second, I guess my question is, I'd be very interested in learning what you see the end game as being, kind of what your goals are. you know, what is it going to take for you to sit back at some point in the future and say to yourself, this is the impact I wanted to make, and I did well.
Gotcha. You can just envision me as like, you know, Pinky and the Brain, and I'm the brain. I'm like, no, I'm just joking. I always thought the smart one was actually the skinny one, but no, really, it is simple. I have a vision in my head, and it's not of what things can be, it's of what I actually experienced and saw, and wanting to change that so vehemently that I'm willing to give up my life towards a particular goal to change it. When I feel like other systems really can't fix it, it's like, how can I create it? And to be honest with you, that vision was, I was in Romania. In Romania, there's a deposit of minerals that is the largest of its kind in the world. It is so rich that the water running in the stream, I swear to you, look into it, it's golden. It's literally like yellow and golden. When I was driven back there with a business partner to tell us about how she could access the minerals and what we should do as far as a company, how we should help some of our other clients access, blah, 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 we went through this little village with like 2,000 people in it. And outside of that village was like old Russian era type factories that it went out of business. In the factory, there was one set of factories in the middle that was literally equipped as a factory that built machines to make other factories. It was shut down. It wasn't working. 2,000 people sitting there in complete poverty. They traveled back to where the minerals are, not to collect anything, magnesium or anything else like that, because it's the largest deposit of magnesium in the world. They go out there to collect firewood. And they aren't chopping down big trees, they're getting sticks off the ground, putting them in big old things, and 6, 7 little girls with ripped up shirts walking down there, you know, trying to get it by. And I remember asking myself, like, why in the world are you even talking to me? You looked at what you have? You have a solid set of individuals. If they were innovators, if they were skilled people, they could tap their own backyard. Magnesium? A place that makes machines? Well, why don't you make some 3D printers and start, you know, basic DLMS or SLS type 3D printing with all that magnesium you got, and you could be prototyping and printing parts for people. But it was so like, what? Huh? And that's when I said, you know, there has to be another model. Someone has to develop that model and promote it to the level by which other people, when they think, I can do it that way, or I can do it this way. And those people have an option to change their life without having to beg for someone else to drop some money on their back. So when I think about the end goal, I'm way more thinking about that situation and changing it so it's just as common to think this way than it is, I just got to get some money from somebody to fix it.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank
to
you.
Georgia Tech, Faruq. Really much appreciated.